All right, welcome back to the DenofTruth. Today we got a very special guest. Actually, it's just a homie, so no one too special, but someone who I've been homies with for a very long time, and I think it's just about time. I think we've been planning this for a minute, haven't we?
Yeah, man. Would you start the podcast around like 4 months ago, 5 months ago? Like you actually launched it?
I actually put pen to paper about 4 months ago, but it's been in the works for like a year.
Yeah, man. So I was trying to hit you up. I was like, come on, what's my time?
When
am I going to be on?
You know what? I had to get all my shit together. I had to get all these gear. I remember I thought I was ready. I spent like $700 on all this gear. Yeah. And then I realized I went to this music store, and then I realized all the gear that I had wasn't compatible for the podcast.
Right. That's how much it cost you at the end, man.
So look, I paid $700 for the gear that I had. I realized all that shit I couldn't use. Yeah. Then the guy told me, he was like, listen, if you're starting a podcast, all you really need to use is $400. Right. This guy licked me up with these mics and stands. He looked at me, he was like, man, you gotta be an idiot. I tried to do it on Amazon. I was like on YouTube tutorials. But yeah, man, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just working.
Introduce yourself, man. Let the people know
introduce myself. Nothing too special. Name's Tommy. Just working currently full-time, studying full-time. Apparently I got some polarizing views, so that's why Tina brought me on. So
this guy is one of the most famous Twitter polarizing figures in Western Sydney. And the thing about Tommy is I've known Tommy from time. So I've been able to see his transition from being left-leaning to being right-leaning, seeing his sort of ideas develop, seeing him doing research. And one thing that I realized is that throughout your transition, one thing that people, I feel, one of the reasons why people have this perspective or this opinion about you is that you just tell the truth.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends what's the truth on them, you know what I mean? It's like, if I'm spitting something, like if I'm saying something, they might not agree with it. They just disregard me. They're like, nah, man, you're talking on this shit. Like, I don't believe you. But at the end of the day, you know what I mean? I kind of think I'm a data-driven guy. I look at the numbers. I break down the numbers. I talk more about it. And, at the end of the day, it's up to them if they want to be enabled. They want to believe it or not. But I think everybody's got to make their own research. I think, like, a lot of people on social media these days just read what they see. And we talked about this before. It's like pretty much if you read the news, you're pretty much going to be misinformed. But if you don't read the news, it's like you're uninformed. That's what Denzel Washington said, right? Yeah, it's like, so how the fuck do you balance it out where like, where am I getting my data from? Where am I getting my facts from? Because stats can be skewed as well. So it's more of like, you gotta look into like, where am I getting these numbers from so I can actually make this like conclusion of the facts, you know what I mean?
So let's go straight from the beginning. So I want to get so in regards to your ideas, where did you start and where did you sort of see transition? So were you more left-leaning first and then you sort of became more right-leaning? So, explain a bit about your perspectives and your journey to where you are.
So pretty much, man, I mean, back in high school, I mean, every young person would. It's like, pretty much when you hear something like, oh, free this, free that, or like everything comes for free, it's like, man, that sounds good, right? And then obviously I was a huge like communist or huge socialist, you know what I mean? So it was crazy because the general narrative is like, oh, corporations are too greedy, or it's like, oh, they wish the government should have a bigger role in helping society, and, like they need to give out more money for people, redistribute the wealth, tax the 1%, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it all sounded good to me because as a kid, you're not living the real world yet, still at school, you know what I mean? But then growing up and then starting to make money, I think like the first time I got my pay slip, it's like what the hell is this tax, man? Like, I'm getting taxed a shitload of money, man.
Man, especially when you see that, especially when you start earning, I think it was more than 70 grand, and you just see
you get taxed like nearly half of them thing,
half your fee. Like, what's going on? So where's this money going to? And why is it even? We talk to a lot of small business owners, like people who are starting to establish, whether it be a restaurant, whether they're photographers. Yeah. And one thing that they say is that they're getting taxed so much that they really think, is it worth starting my own enterprise and putting myself through all this stress, doing all this hard work, when the government's just going to be in my back pocket?
Exactly, man. It's it kind of discourages investment, and kind of discourages jobs, all that kind of stuff that we like talking about. It's like, oh, more jobs, more of the economy, all that kind of stuff. But hey, let's tax the shit out of these guys, and that's about it. But I guess moving to being more right-leaning was when I actually started to just follow the trend. It's like, hey, like, it all seems kind of good, but I want to see what's on the other side. Like, why are we making these arguments against these guys, right? So look to my research, reading more of Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman, Ben Shapiro, all those kind of like conservative figures. It kind of led me to understand that, like the people on the right are kind of more data driven. And obviously both sides got numbers, but it's just depending on how you present those facts and the numbers building up to those numbers, right?
Yeah.
So there's always statistics, but there's a statistic behind it that presents of why that is. So looking to it, I kind of shifted, like saying, like maybe government isn't the right answer. Maybe government is intervening too much into the economy. Government is intervening too much into our lives. I kind of saw it as like maybe like we should reduce the size of government so it kind of be better for everyone because we got more freedom and more equitable outcomes.
So you think your transition was more from you started off left leaning and in the in your early stages of development, you sort of saw, great socialist ideas, great, you get free this, you get free that, great cultural, I guess. The good thing about being left leaning is the cultural aspect to it.
Yeah.
And then as you got older, you started making more money, you started getting more into the real world.
Yeah.
You started to become right leaning because you started to see where the government is intervening too much and it's affecting people.
Exactly, man. And
so that being said, I know a lot of people have. When I say right-leaning, and I talk to you about right-leaning, I know for a lot of people that will trigger a lot of negative connotations in their head.
Right, yeah.
So I want to ask you, what is your definition of someone who's right-leaning?
Right-leaning?
How would you describe that?
I mean, well, there's a lot of variations, man. You got like a lot of people who are populist, like you see Donald Trump. Yep. You got a lot of people who are conservative, like conservative figures like Ben Shapiro, or you got people like Milo Yiannopoulos, I kind of think he's alt-right now.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, I'm more of a libertarian. It's more like, because pretty much as a libertarian, it's more of you do your business and I'll do my business. Just don't infringe on my rights and I won't infringe on your rights. Just stay out of my business and I'll leave you alone. You know what I mean? But as a conservative, it'd be more like, hey, we like that, like personal freedom, individual responsibility, but also we want a strong social fabric. So then we should legislate laws that legislate morality into it.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of gets mixed up into libertarian and conservatives. But I guess all the same values that we all share in the right-leaning center is pretty much, lower taxes, low regulation, more personal liberty, individual responsibility, and, smaller government. Because all those kind of things, we on the right kind of believe that that's the best way that society can thrive and can grow, because every individual has their own right to make what their lives want to be like. So that's pretty much it.
I get you. And I think for me personally, I think I'm probably more left-leaning, but I do have a lot of principles in what I believe that I would say are more towards the right, just in regards to. And I that being said, I hate it when. I think you can be right-leaning and have a lot of left-leaning perspectives as well.
Exactly, man.
Like I think people are consumed with the whole aspect of, if I'm left-leaning, then I have to just abide by everything that the left subscribes to. Right. And so the people on the right, there's no sort of in the middle where we can. And I think that's what's dangerous about what you talked about in regards to people not being able to have a sit down conversation and just talk about these conversations where we could have people from different parts of the world, different religions, different political views, come and sit down together and be like, hey, this is what I believe. What do you believe? Let's have a conversation about it. Let's talk about the facts and let's work together. Right. Now it's sort of like, I'm not sure if you're seeing it, especially in Australia, it's like a civil war where if you're left, then you are associated with people with the left and you don't even want to cross to the right. Exactly, and so are people on the right.
Exactly.
Both people are doing it, and it's getting to the point now where I feel like a lot of it is counterproductive.
Exactly.
How are we going to move forward? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I kind of think, I totally agree with you over there. I mean, I kind of think that America is much more polarizing than Australia. I think that even though we're left-leaning, I kind of think that no one's exposed to the right yet. And we're kind of seeing the trend right now where it's moving towards that, just because there's right-wing populist movements everywhere. You've seen Brazil, you've seen the EU where the UK is moving out, Brexit. You've seen obviously the rise of Donald Trump has catalyzed all that kind of stuff to come into the factor, but. In terms of, hey, you're on the left, like, I won't talk to you. Or you're on the right, I won't talk to you. You're a Nazi, you're a fascist. Or, other guys on the right will be like, oh, nah, he's a communist. I don't want to talk to the guy. It's like no one wants to understand each other's viewpoints enough to make it, like you said, a productive conversation where, hey, we both disagree on these two things, but let's see the reasons why. Otherwise, it's always going to be polarizing factors, man, over there. So, yeah.
Nah, it's a very interesting time in the world, man. I'm telling you,
Oh,
especially if we go on social media.
Yeah.
I'm sick of saying that. I'm sick of saying people just fighting. I swear, it feels like there's some sort of proxy civil war that's happening. People and do you think throughout your journey, Asian guy from Western Sydney, do you think that throughout your development, people thought that you were very weird? Because coming from Western Sydney, majority, I would say,
are Labour.
About 90%.
Are Labour.
Yeah, 90% of Western Sydney are Labour. Most of them are immigrants.
Yeah.
So do you think coming out and just sharing your perspective, because I also saw the backlash.
Yeah.
I also saw people saying that you're a bad guy, people saying that you're not in touch with reality. So how is that perceived in your community? Do you see it like there's a lot of Asian conservatives? Because I feel like Asians, do a really good job in focusing on businesses. A lot of them are business owners. A lot of them really focus on family values, core values, religious values. So how was that transition for you in regards to that?
Personally, so pretty much, I guess if I was to perceive, understand like how people perceive me as an Asian conservative in Western Sydney, I think most of them wouldn't understand me. It's very misunderstood as when you say, hey, like, I'm not a Labour supporter, I'm a Liberal supporter, right? Like, they'll be like, why? Like, Liberals hate the poor, like, they're only benefiting the rich. And I think that really varies on income, especially when you mention Asians. Yeah. So obviously, mostly wealthy or very well off, or upper middle class Asians, and particularly in Western Sydney, they tend to vote Liberal. They tend to be more liberal in the community, and if you see more of the Asians in the Labour Party, right? Like, obviously they're working class people. So
majority,
So obviously, and that comes to information as well. So obviously, when it comes to the Asians who are in the Liberal Party, it's more like, hey, like, we run businesses, like we have an understanding of the value of the dollar, financial literacy. It's like, hey, like, pretty much I want to vote for Liberal because the policies kind of benefit us, and they think that that's the best way to go as well. But more so Asian, people who are in the Labour Party, it's like we haven't got to that point yet. So I don't think they would, be exposed to that kind of side yet, or be pretty much. And it sounds like they're struggling as well, obviously. And when the government says, "Hey, here's some free stuff, here's more welfare, here's more money to make your life easier," it's a lot better for them. It's a lot better for them to vote Labour, right? It's just buying votes, pretty much. Yeah. But I guess that, like I said, it varies on income, but also just being exposed to to different political parties within Western Sydney. Everybody's got to be more recognised. They got to recognise it more, man. Like, and I think that Australian politics it's very shallow. People aren't really, they're not really looking into it. It's like whatever the Labor says, like, hey, like, we want to invest, like a couple $100 billion into hospitals, a couple $100 billion, into childcare, all that kind of stuff. It sounds really good, but no one wants to ask, where's it coming from? Where's this money coming from, right? Or and the Liberals would say, no, we should reduce those, we should cut more of government spending because we need to pay back the deficit, and we also think that we need to do that so we can lower taxes in different places.
I feel I 100% agree with what you're saying, but also I feel like the communication that the Liberal government has done, especially to Western Sydney, is that they do a lot of people who are Labour supporters from Western Sydney. So you got a lot of immigrants from all different backgrounds. Yeah. They do feel as if the Liberal Party is extremely dishonest. Yeah. I mean, even if you look at Western Sydney, that was one of the hubs for the unions. Yeah. So, a lot of the union members from the New South Wales government, for example, they came from Western Sydney. So exactly. It is a huge hub for for Labour Party. But I think also the communication, like you said, in financial literacy. I mean, a lot of people from Western Sydney, as I said, they're working class people. So when the Liberal government come out on news and they say to certain people, listen, unfortunately, it's too bad. We're going to put a tax on the M4. Yeah. We're all going to pay for the M4, even though you've already paid for the road. Exactly. People are going to look at it in a particular type of way. Yeah. And I 100% I agree with that. People have every right to understand where their tax money is going to. And I guess that's why people go towards left-leaning, because they see that these governments are coming out and communicating one message and communicating another message. I mean, we all we all go to the city.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about you guys, but the city's been messed up for 3 years now. You know, and you got people working in the city. These guys are making $2,000 a week.
Yeah.
Where's that money coming from?
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? And all that has been sort of liberal
policies.
There've been liberal policies.
Yeah.
So everyone has the right to critique the political government.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't critique, whatever party you support. It's like, I identify myself more as a liberal because I share very common values with them. I share very common policies with them. But to be honest with you, I don't really believe in the current liberal government. I don't really believe for the past couple of years how the liberal party has been in power. Just because I kind of think they're moving towards more of the left and more of moderates now than actually on the conservative side or libertarian side. Because
100%.
Because like if you look at pretty much like you said, like building the M4, but let's tax you guys. That's kind of absurd to me because I'm already paying my tax money for you guys, and yet you're gonna charge me again for something that you just taxed me on. That's ridiculous, right? So I don't support that. It's more like, for me, I'm more of a guy about privatize. Like, I support privatization, and I think that's a big word that Australians are very scared of, privatization.
100%.
Because no one understands privatization over here.
So explain that a little bit, because especially when you talk about privatization, a lot of, what comes to mind is the M4. And for a lot of people who don't understand the significance of the M4. The M4 is pretty much the main road that links Western Sydney to the city and pretty much every other area. So the significance of this road is, or this highway, is that pretty much anyone who works for Western Sydney takes this road to go to work. So you have people who are labourers, you have people who are tradies, people who live in a professional environment. From one side to the M4 to the other side, one way, you're looking at $5. Now going back home from work, you look at another $5. So that's $10. So that's, let's say if you work 5 days a week, that's $50. That's $50 that you could be using.
You times that by 52, man. That's crazy.
Exactly.
Man. Yeah.
So that's the significance of this road. But explain to us a little bit about privatization and where do you think they went wrong, and what you think about that?
Well, it's not just M4. I kind of think that anything publicly run is kind of a disaster. I mean, if you look in the city, right? I mean, how long have they been trying to build that rail in the middle of town hall all the way to like when the city rail, right? It's been like how many years? Like 3 years now? I don't know how long it is because I'm still seeing the orange block still covering it. It's like, and it's just like, hey man, the development plan is still slowing down. It's still like, hey, like it's gonna come in a year, but then let's extend it to now. I think that, and I say that that's publicly run because for me, privatization is always about competition and the funds, right? So pretty much, if you're gonna, let's say the government wants to build like the rail or any other highway or motorway, whatever hell it is, right? They're not doing it themselves. They got to contract the companies. They got to contract the companies in order for them to build that. But then if the government's contracting it to a private company, what usually happens is that the government has no transparency. They don't have much insight into it, obviously. So what private companies tend to do is like, hey, like, we're building it, but we kind of need a little bit more funds from you guys. Or like we need to extend our timeline because because it's not their money. It's not their money. It's our taxpayers' money that the government is funding to them. Now, as opposed to privatization, right, where let's say the government's out of that, and a private company wants to build a road or wants to build something or wants to build a public transport, whatever the hell it is, it's more of their money now. It's more like, okay, because if you're spending your own money, you're more careful with your money.
100%.
If someone gives you money, you're not careful with that money.
Realistically.
So if a private company has that money, it's more of, okay, what's the most efficient way to cut down the costs, to get better labor, and deliver on a fast timeline for our customers. So that's the whole point of privatization, because there's more transparency and there's more accountability for a company to develop those kind of projects for us.
Even sometimes, I'm going to be 100% honest, sometimes I think with these projects, someone somehow is getting at least 10 mil from this bullshit.
Exactly, man. Because they're milking it, man.
And they're just saying tiles or something like that, because the extent to the inefficiency of the government sometimes really frustrates me, because like I said, I'm high on, you got small business owners, you got people who are, professionals, people who are actually working, they're getting taxed heavily. The money that the money that they're being taxed, if they were able to use that weekly on, you know, whatever they're gonna do with their families,
Exactly,
or if they're trying to save up to do something, the government's using that inefficiently. And I feel as if there's got to be something that we have that holds them accountable. It just holds them accountable to where our money is going. I don't know why we can't choose where our money is going. Even if you look at the new stadium being built in Moore Park,
that's ridiculous.
How are you going to build a new stadium in Moore Park when people can't have a drink after 1:30? Yet you want to spend billions of dollars building. How many of us even go to Moore Park? Let's be real. How many people have actually sat in the stadium of Moore Park and watched the sporting game? It's a very selective amount of people. Do you know what I mean? So now you want to spend billions of dollars building a new stadium. You know, when you've already decapitated the whole of the nightlife. So you want people to go to the stadium, finish the game at 10:30, go home, when you could have used those billions of dollars working on, you know, schools in, you know, lower income areas. But that's also what I want to talk to you about as well. I know this is probably a bit out of what the context of what we're talking about, but we were talking a little bit about, you know, I guess state politics, state politics and Australian-wide politics. And one thing that I noticed, especially from this state election, the New South Wales election, is that even going out, actually voting, I've significantly seen the increase in the rise of the alt-right.
The alt-right.
Right. Okay. And I think that's extremely alarming. You know, like you said, we have polarizing figures in Australia like Pauline Hanson, Mark Latham, all those people who, and you know, for a lot of people, they look at that and they have a laugh. You know, they say these people are idiots.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, they look at. They
never get into office.
Yeah, you know, you look at these people and you're like, these people are idiots. And let's just brush them aside. But for a lot of the people, they actually take what they're saying as the truth, as the truth, as substance. And you can see that because they have gaining popularity. You know, in the New South Wales election, I think Mark Latham won a seat. He won a seat. I'm pretty sure. So you have someone who shares these alt-right perspectives, who has obviously been voted into parliament for a reason, because people are voting for him. He's got popularity. Right? And my issue with these sort of people is that, as I said, a lot of people look at them as idiots, but there's a lot of people in smaller minority groups who are actually being impacted on their policies and impacted on, you know, what they're saying, which is completely ridiculous. You know? So what are your thoughts on, you know, that side of politics and what's happening in regards to that?
I don't think the right should be welcoming to the alt-right, just because they share very conservative but very fascist kind of views, nationalist views. And when it comes to nationalism, I support it, but it's like the ultra-nationalists, man. It's like, fuck the immigrants, you know. I swear to God. You know, besides like all the political, like, you know, the talk they're having, it's pretty much the general words they're throwing out is just fuck the immigrants, and you know, fuck all the minorities, man. And I don't support that. It's just pretty much when it comes to like but you understand why One Nation kind of won the seats. It's pretty much everybody's fed up by the left, man. Everybody's very fed up by it, but I kind of see that those kind of conversations that they're sparking up, it's very counterproductive to what actual conservatives are trying to do in this nation or worldwide, to be honest with you. And I know you brought up Mark Latham. Honestly, I don't know too much about Mark Latham, but he was all right before he One Nation. He was originally Labour support. He was Labour. He was running for Prime Minister for Labour, right? And then now he's kind of shifted to the right, which I liked. And then I don't know why he ran for One Nation, but in terms of pretty much Pauline Hanson's talk, xenophobia, all that kind of stuff, I kind of think that is very counterproductive. It's not working for Australia. And I think that the more of that's going to happen is very alarming. Yeah, we can throw jokes about it, like everybody can disregard them, but they won the seats, man. Like that's concerning, right? But, you know, Pauline Hanson, in terms of, she symbolizes something deeper than just like the hate that she spurs. It's pretty much, there is a problem with immigration. There is a problem with some cultures coming into here that aren't assimilating correctly into Australian. They're not sharing the same values as us or the same laws. So obviously that's why she brought that up, and that's why she won a seat. I kind of think that it could have been, you know, skewed to a little bit more to a neutral kind of side. But even though you don't have to support it, you kind of have to acknowledge that she is bringing up a very valid opinion that should be recognized and that we should have a discussion about rather than disregarding all side. But like I said, I don't support the alt-right, but she does bring a very alarming concern about immigration over here.
Yeah, and to me personally, I think all these people are bigots. Let's be real. But like you said, when you touched upon, those issues are a deeper issue within the Australian culture.
Yeah.
Because Australia is one of the most unique countries in the world because the country is based off multiculturalism and immigration.
Exactly, man.
There's not too many places in the world where you have you can be brought up in a community with an Arab, European, an Asian, an African, Pacific Islander, all in one community and go to school with so many different religions. Yeah, that's what makes Australia so unique. Unique, But when you have people like Pauline Hanson, who are, for example, because she didn't start with the Muslims. People think that she started with the Muslims.
She started with the Asians first, man.
When Asians were coming into Australia, they were starting their own businesses. They were doing good. They were doing well for themselves. And then she felt as if the Asians were taking over the jobs. And let's be real, Australia's a capitalist country. It's a capitalist country.
It's a capitalist country,
to be 100% honest with you, if you're a business owner and you have an Asian, a black, Muslim, whatever guy who's able to do a job for you in half the time and half the money, and you're just as fine with it, then that person has every right to do that job. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Exactly. It's all about efficiency. And obviously we understand that, for, I guess, their group of people really, about 90% of their base is, you're talking about middle income Australian working class people who feel as if they are being disenfranchised. Yeah. But at the end of the day, is that my fault? Is that my fault that a business owner is choosing to employ me because I am qualified and I'm efficient at my job and choosing not to employ you? It's not a slight on you, but it's a slight on efficiency and us growing up in a capitalist economy. And I feel like that is something that they don't understand. I mean, and one of the things that they keep saying and I keep hearing is that, especially in Melbourne, for example, I use Melbourne as an example because that's what we've seen. And people are saying that the blacks are trying to take over, the Sydney's people are trying to take over. Well, look, let's be real. If they were trying to take over, someone would have sent me a text message. I have not received a text message of someone saying Africans and black people are trying to take over. No, people are coming to Australia because it is a great country. It's got great values. People can start families here. People can start, whatever they want here and live in peace. Right. But just to say, I understand where you're coming from is if you're an immigrant or anyone coming into Australia, you have to learn to respect the values of here, respect one another, respect the culture here, and straight up live in peace and be appreciative that you're living in a great country. Exactly. Because realistically, people always say, my country is the best country in the world, Oh, you can live in that country then. Yeah. Why are you living in Australia?
Why are you moving over here, man? Yeah. What's going on?
So we always have to, I always have a deep appreciation for Australia, and I get that point. Yeah. But I just feel like you said, these conversations have started to become counterproductive, and it's starting like civil war.
Too radical. It's gone too radical right, radical left. And great point that you mentioned, like pretty much you got a lot of people coming over here with, like a lot of people say it's the American dream, right? But over here, same thing, Australian dream. People come over to this country because we got opportunity over here, and we're a capitalist country, so it's good to run a business here, and it's good to create opportunities over here. And in terms of the economic sense where immigrants are coming over to get a better living, I mean, that's awesome, dude, because you're contributing to the economy, you're creating more jobs. And even if you're not creating more jobs, but if your business is where it's spending a lot or it's investing a lot, it's going to circulate back into the economy anyway. But I guess my point was pretty much like you mentioned is there are some cultures where are coming through where it's pretty much we're not respecting, we're going to go in, we're not going to respect the laws, we're not going to assimilate into the culture, we're not going to learn English. All these factors are going to be structural barriers for you guys. Yeah. And that's going to be a burden on Australian society and the economy as well, because you're seeing a lot of people coming over here and just applying for welfare, which shouldn't be happening unless you're being a productive citizen also at that point. But like I said, man, Pauline Hanson started with the Asians first, and she's like, these bloody Asians coming in, like they're taking our jobs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I kind of also see the silver lining in it, where it's like, if people don't recall, it's pretty much when the Vietnamese community came over after the war. Yeah. They were going to work, right? But in order to make things work, both parents had to go to work. Yeah. And they left their children at home. And what happens when you have a parentless household is that children start going to crime. They start more likely to do drugs.
Yeah.
Turn to the streets.
Yeah, okay, I get
and that's
you.
what happened to the rise of FIT.
Yeah.
And I think that that kind of resembles of why there was that talk and why nation one. That's back in like the 1990s is because of that issue. Because 5-2 was pretty big over there, man. Like it was happening everywhere, like into Cabramatta. Like you pretty much drove out all the Italians, and then you guys got running crimes. You got syringes on the ground. You got people shooting each other. Like they shot a politician. Like that's just
It was popping off.
It was popping off, right? But I guess when it comes to balance it out and bring it back into like the middle where everybody can talk about it, it's like we should bring in immigrants who provide a good value to our society, bring new ideas and bring new investments. But those who don't assimilate into Australian society, then we should really reconsider why they're doing over here, man. Like we should try to reduce that number. And
I get you.
Another point I want to bring up is. There's a lot of the reason why we're seeing a lot of stagnating wages in Australia right now. Typically Australian citizens is because of immigration. Now, I'm not saying
How's that?
I'm not saying that immigrants shouldn't be coming in because like my father was an immigrant. He came in, he built a business, he's employed 20 people, and he's investing into the economy. He's creating jobs, all that kind of stuff. But the point I'm bringing about is stagnating wages is because you're seeing a lot of there's a spike of increased mass immigration into Australia. Now, I'm not complaining if it's high-skilled labor. High-skilled labor is a different story because you're not affecting wages, right? Because high-skilled labor is always in demand. It's always scarce. So people are going to come in and fill in those roles, and then they contribute to into the local economy.
Yeah, the community.
But you got a lot of people who are low-skilled workers coming into Australia as well. And it seems to be a problem because they are depressing wages for Australian citizens as well at that point.
I get that point, but also about how do you start? Let's just say if you're coming from a third world country,
man.
for example, your mother's coming from your mother and father are coming from a third world country.
Yeah.
They're not very high skilled, but they have a drive. They have a
to
dream.
work.
They have a dream for you to go to Australia.
Yeah.
They may not get a high skilled job. They might be working in a factory, maybe a labor worker.
Yeah.
Something realistic. And they're working for you to go to school, working for you to go to high school, working for you to get university. So I feel like with that, I think in theory, it's a great idea, but I think this is probably where I am more left leaning.
Yeah.
Because I come from an immigrant family.
Exactly.
And I'm lucky that my family was educated, so I didn't really feel that
pressure.
Or that experience of having parents who are low skilled, because my mom came in as a highly skilled labor, which is a different ball game to a lot of immigrants. So I didn't really feel that, but I have seen a lot of people who their parents came in, have no education, but they can work 17 hours a day. And they're working to put you through university.
Exactly.
So I think we have to have a balance.
Yeah, it's like pretty much low skilled workers who come in as well, and they're working their ass off, even though they're whatever, like I said, they're depressing wages. But they're working for the opportunity, and they're providing their kids to go to university here, and then that kid hopefully makes something out of themselves, and they invest into the future economy of Australia, right? So I'm not saying that we should, in terms of as a conservative, as a libertarian, it's more like we should try and reduce the amount of immigration that we have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we gotta recognize that, like you said, like low skilled workers start off as that, and then they make something out of themselves later on.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I just wanted to bring up that issue because not many people are paying attention to it. A lot of people are saying, hey, like we should talk about minimum wage. We should talk about this. Like Australians aren't making, like their wages aren't increasing. And that's just one issue I just brought up. That's one point to the whole bag of issues, right? Is that's something I want to bring up because not many people are acknowledging that as well.
And you know what's crazy? You just bringing up that point is just you thinking about the topic. You thinking about, okay, how can this affect society? How can this affect my neighbor? And what strategies we can come, whether it be a good strategy or just throwing out an idea to help.
Yeah, but
that comes from that idea, and you having conversation with people from different sides of the field. And I think that's something that Australia is really missing. I think if you look at Australian media, completely left.
Yeah.
You know? And look, for me personally, I don't mind. Like, it doesn't really affect me. I don't really watch mainstream news, and I'm not really following.
But that's our circle, right?
Yeah,
like,
okay, yeah.
But like people who are like, who aren't on the internet, or like, you know, people who are like 50 and over, they're not familiar with like anything else than Channel 10, Channel 7, Channel 9, like we talked about, SBS.
Yeah.
It's more like, this is the only news that we can watch because we're familiar with it.
Yeah.
We see it as like, that's some bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm going to look into it and start looking into the numbers and start looking into the facts. Of why does this happen? The fact is...
It's funny you say that. I was telling my mom. My mom told me, she said, our generation is an extremely important generation because her generation is people 50 plus.
Yeah.
They think about this. They had no access to the internet. So you have such an insulated opinion and thought on news. It's so insulated. Now, if you look at, now you could complete a degree online and you could be halfway around the world, but you can do a degree living in Sydney.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? we are so exposed to so much reality, and I think the internet's completely changed the ballpark for a lot of things, whether that be politics, people's point of views, economic theory. It's that you're starting to realize that particular countries, even like what you were talking about, you know, the right rising. You can see now on the internet. You can see that this is not just happening in Australia or in America. You can see it's happening in Europe, happening in Brazil. It's happening in Asia. It's happening in Africa with the nationalist movements. You can see that these changes are really happening. So I think what we need to be having is discussions with each other. Whether you're actual conservative, whether you're actual someone who's left-leaning, we need to come to have a discussion so we can stop people from becoming alt-right and from people from becoming alt-left. Exactly. We need to, I think everything has gone so far left and then so far right that there's no room for us to be in the middle. And I think that's the sort of conversations we're having. I mean, a lot of things these days, you can even, when I do watch mainstream TV, it's so like, it's just so divisive, you know. It's so just like watered down. Yeah. You know, it's crazy. Like, you know, it's weird. Where is it going to lead? You know, the type of society that we have. I was watching Get Hard with Kevin. Is it Get Hard?
Get Hard with Will Ferrell.
Yeah, with Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
And there was a part when Will Ferrell was like to Kevin Hart. They was still in the car. Yeah. And then Will Ferrell was like to Kevin Hart. The scene was Kevin Hart wanted him to say nigga, right? And then Will Ferrell was like, I'm not gonna say that, bro. Yeah. I'm not gonna say, it's a movie, and he's like, I'm not gonna say that. And then he goes, saying and then make the sound a dog makes, grr. Yeah. And then Will Ferrell said that. Yeah. And the first thing I said, that shit can never be pulled ever again. Imagine someone saying that shit now. Yeah, man. Or there was a part of the scene where even if you watch like the old Eddie Murphy tapes, and what he's talking about, like, he's straight up talking about gay people, but in not a funny way, but the way that he's saying is very explicit. He would just say straight up. Yeah. And I was just thinking, are we ever going to get a point in our society where we're going to get back into the middle, where we can realize certain things are jokes or certain things aren't as important, or we're going to just always get worse and worse and worse? Yeah. And I understand it. I think it's a great thing that, you know, we're a lot more sensitive to people, you know, people who have been affected by whatever. You know, it's a great thing that we're a lot more informed about that. Yeah. But we gotta reach the point where we sort of got to be in the middle. We got to sort of understand what the difference between a joke, you know, because crazy thing is that most of my information come from podcast comedians.
And
straight up.
And they're speaking facts.
Because they just speak facts for what it is. Like, most of it is crazy. Like, most of it, I could probably say the last time I watched a proper news channel was about 2-3 years ago. Yeah, but like the full session. Yeah. The full session.
Yeah, I turn on the TV, I'm just like, fuck. It's 2 minutes in. This game boring, man. I can't watch it. I want to read it, man. I want to read this shit. It's like,
so. What do you think our generation? What do you think are going to be the biggest issues for us? Because obviously we're eventually going to have more people in our generation become politics, and we can see it in America. Yeah. We can see it in Australia. A lot of people in our generation are going to start being in politics. Yeah. What do you think are going to be the biggest issues? What do you see are the biggest issues that we need to address and are going to be talked about and are going to be popular?
I mean, let's see, man. First is probably economics. People need to have a better understanding of economics before they try to propose any policies or try to advocate any policies.
Yeah.
Because you're determining the future of everyone pretty much, because money makes the world go round. And if you're not going to put out a good economic policy, you're going to be damaging not just the economy but also the social policies of it as well. I mean, because money has social impacts, right? So people got to understand economics. I feel like everybody just wants to spit out like anything, like I said before, anything for free. They support it. They don't understand why it's free. They don't understand where it's coming from, right? I think second one would probably be, try looking to objective. Try to be more objective, man. It's like people are too far left, like you said, too far right. It's like, try to have a conversation. It's free speech. Right? I think that's a big concern, free speech. Everybody seems to be like, hey, I'm on the left, cool. They meet some guy who supports Donald Trump, me, not really, but like I kind of support him. And then if I say that, it's like, hey, dude, they ask me, do you support Donald Trump? It's like, I like him enough. And the guys, they're like, nah, we're not talking to you anymore. You're a Nazi. It's like, I'm like, that happened to me in Newtown. I was like, I'm an Asian. How am I a Nazi? Well, how does that make sense to me, man?
But the thing about Donald Trump, which is interesting, is that when Donald Trump became the president of the United States, I kept saying, America is the biggest marketing company in the world.
Yeah, man, you're telling me it's a movie.
The whole country, eventually one day in history, whether it be 1,000 years, we're going to look back at this country and we're going to be like, this was the greatest movie and marketing campaign ever of all time.
Yeah, man, don't give me that.
It's a crazy economy, regardless. I don't support Donald Trump, but looking at it on the outside, I'm like, okay, who voted for him?
Middle class white people, man.
Okay, so definitely people voted for him, and there was agenda as to why people voted for him.
Exactly.
But then when you hear this man speak, and he's just a straight up bigot, I think he became president, and he didn't think he was gonna become president, and everything is running on the fly.
Yeah.
I think he's just figuring out on the fly. I think he's just like every single day is a president. It's like starting a new job or starting a business.
He's trying to wing the whole fucking
You don't really know what the hell is happening, but you just every single day you come into work and you're getting things done.
Yeah.
But you have no actual plan. You have no actual understanding of the impact of what you're doing, what you're saying, and how you're hurting people.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think something that a lot of people don't speak about is how he got elected.
How he got elected, right?
Because it's not like someone
put
him there.
Yeah, it's the people who voted him in, and I think that's a big issue over there, man. I think why Donald Trump won is because everyone was distracted, and by that I mean distracted in terms that look at social media, right? So all you hear on social media, or all you see on social media, and anything that's broadcasted, TV, celebrities, Hollywood, high-end politicians, anyone famous.
Yeah,
they're all talking about identity politics over there. It's like
everyone.
It's like Black Lives Matter. Okay, you're talking about LGBTI rights. Okay, you're talking about anything that's related to identity politics in terms of like Muslims getting abused, or Arabs getting abused, or like black people police brutality, or you got like, oh, we should try to help same-sex marriage, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And oh, he's a fascist, he's a Nazi, all that kind of stuff. What they seem to miss is that you disenfranchise 70% of the American population, white middle-class Americans, because pretty much, if you're white in America, you're privileged. We don't want to talk to you. You got no issues, and that's why Donald Trump won. Because at the end of the day, all these middle class, working class people, 70%, by the way, they're pretty much like, I just want to make money so I can provide food on the table for my family. I don't care anything about anything else. I don't care about this. Like, sure, like it carries weight. There's issues. But they're not paying attention to identity politics. They're paying attention to economics. They need money to provide for their families. They're worried about their jobs being automated or being outsourced. They're worried about, what's going to happen, in this rural community where like pretty much all they see is poverty over there. Or a truck driver, just he's going to lose his job to a driving a robot truck, or anything like that. So that's why Donald Trump won, because everybody was distracted. Everybody's paying attention to his issues, but no one's paying attention to 70%. Of pretty much a majority of them voted for Donald Trump. The white people were middle class. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I definitely agree with you that Donald Trump's speech enables or gives confidence to these guys who weren't there before. It's like they're pretty much all dormant until like this. Oh, Donald Trump's talking about this. Like he's legitimized it. Let's go out there and talk about it as well. Like that's why you see a lot of white hate crimes coming out now. See a lot of the KKK having this confidence where they're coming back out. It's so my biggest point was always imagine Donald Trump having Barack Obama's personality and having the policies that he's setting out right now. I think that he'll be a lot more likable because the way that Barack Obama was talking was amazing, man. Like he pretty much, the reason why he won because he unified the country together. Yeah. And we're not gonna get into like how Barack, like, cause my stance on Barack Obama. Yeah. I didn't like his policies, but I loved him as a person. Yeah. Cause
he galvanized people. He brought people together.
He was inspirational, man. Yeah. And I think that if Donald Trump had that kind of personality and had the policy set in place that he believes now, I reckon it could have been a whole lot different and he could have brought the country together. Yeah. Right? But I guess when Donald Trump was saying, we're having a lot of mass immigration coming in, we need to reduce that, these guys, I think the first time where the media started going against Donald Trump, because they all thought it was a joke, Donald Trump running for president.
Realistically.
Yeah, I thought it was a joke when I looked at it. Yeah. I remember it was like 2015, I'm looking like this guy's running for fucking president. Yeah. Not happening. And then it kind of got more serious because he was going against all the Republicans during the nominee selections, and then when he got to the point where he was presenting a speech and he was like he pretty much he should have said it the way he said it. He was like, oh, these Mexicans are coming in, the drug dealers, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But we all know, you and I know what he meant. Mm-hmm. He meant that there is a good portion of people crossing the border where they are bringing drugs over. But then the media made it sound like, and it was his fault as well, he could have worded it better, that all Mexicans are drug dealers, let's not bring them in. Yeah. And I think that enabled a lot of white, a lot of racist people, a lot of white nationalists, a lot of KKK people to come out, and that shouldn't be happening at all.
Realistically, they really said that they really, I guess they feel very comfortable around him. Yeah. So I think it's a weird word to say, man. But when Donald Trump's in power, a lot of these people feel very empowered. Yeah. But look, I wanna go to the topic that we were talking about. Something that's really fucked me up the whole week. Yeah. Man, rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle. Man.
Nipsey Hussle, man.
The tragedy that happened, and I think it's a tragedy to the black community. It's a tragedy to America. It's a tragedy to the world that we had a man who was the perfect example of growth, perfect example of a man who stood for helping his community, giving back to his community, was unfortunately killed the way it was. Yeah. And my journey with Nipsey Hussle was that I found Nipsey Hussle at the perfect time in my growth in regards to my mentality and how I see the world. And to make it really, and because he was from Eritrea, a lot of my Habesha people, they really rocked with him and were linking me, and they were saying, man, this guy is switched on. This guy really knows what he's talking about when he talks about growth, when he talks about diet, when he talks about financial well-being. Someone who created a store was employing his own people. He didn't need to be there. This man was already rich. He could have lived in the most richest place in the world. He could help from a distance, but he chose to be a role model. Exactly, he chose to create. He chose to try to get his community to focus on education, focusing on the empowering the youth, and the way he was slaughtered. And that really got me thinking about the topic of mental health. You know, and I know in Charlemagne's Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me, the book, he talks a lot about mental health and people walking around traumatized. Yeah. And I think, first of all, if we're going to talk about that, I think the black community, whether you're from America or especially I feel the African diaspora who have come straight from, a lot of our parents have come from apartheid, colonization, a lot of the people. Yeah. I think one of the things that the African diaspora throughout the world people have come from, colonization, come from, apartheid. Yeah. A lot of them are walking out traumatized because of things that they have seen that's happened around them. And we as black people have to realize that a lot of the shit that we've been through is not normal. Yeah. When you look at the person who unfortunately killed Nipsey Hussle, this man was walking around traumatized, and instead of seeking help, instead of looking at with himself and loving himself, he chose to use his trauma and put it on someone else. Yeah. So I think before we talk about anything, we talk about growth as a community, we need to start healing. That kind of stuff. You know, we need to start healing as a community. A lot of us are traumatized, whether that's going to therapy or whether that's sitting down and really thinking about it. Just talking about it. Yeah. And I think that's why mental health is such an important thing now, because we're starting to see the impacts of mental health in a long period of time. You know?
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, man, Nipsey did everything right. He was pretty much, he was grip, reformed himself, made money, stayed in Crenshaw, opened his own business in Crenshaw when he could open it somewhere else because he wants to invest back into the local economy for the black community in Crenshaw. He partnered with Puma to recreate or pretty much renovate the whole entire basketball court. So that's recreational activities for his community to play, and pretty much he could have moved, like you said, he could have moved out any way he wanted. Man. He got all the money in the world, but he chose to stay there, and yet he did everything right, and he still died. He still got shot. Yeah. It's ridiculous how that's happening, man. And I think that, like you said, right, mental health, that's a big issue. That I agree that there should that there should be investment into that. But I also think it's a cultural thing as well, man. Like you mentioned the African diaspora, right? Mm-hmm. If you look into any African diaspora from the world, not African Americans, coming to America or any Western country, they're making a name for themselves. They're killing it, man. You're seeing a lot of black people from Africa coming, and they're being either engineers, doctors, or lawyers because they're high skilled labor, just like you mentioned your mom, right? Yeah. But then if you look into African Americans, it's a whole different ball game for them. It's like, and I, like you said, the lack of understanding of the culture, the lack of understanding of the history and the roots. Like you said, if they don't understand themselves, then they're going to be lost, and there's no unified community, right?
And I think where I was going with that was, I feel like there's two aspects to it. First of all, is that African Americans have been through a lot within the country.
Exactly,
we all know the history. we know the history of what they're going to.
Yeah.
And it was just recently, so a lot of people realistically, they walk around traumatized, and they're walking around disenfranchised, and they've been through a lot. So that's first of all, and that's why I think mental health is important. But second of all, your future cannot be strong if you do not know your roots.
Yeah.
You know, African American history did not start 100 years ago. Yeah. Slaves were not taken from Africa to America. Engineers, doctors, skilled people were taken to America and became slaves.
Yeah.
So you understanding where your people came from, and a lot of African Americans came from the western side of Africa. So, a lot of you may have been descendants of Mansa Musa, kings in Ghana, kings in Kenya. You would have been descendants from some of the oldest people ever in existence.
Yeah.
So I think understanding your roots and where you're from, and I've seen a lot of celebrities do that, track their heritage back to Africa. Yeah. And I think just knowing where your people are from, it gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you a sense of understanding, because if Americans were doing what they were doing in America and took that capital, invested back in Africa, and made that root and that foundation strong, it'd be crazy. Because like I said, I'm Zimbabwean, so if you talk about the African culture in general, I know this for a fact. Going to jail is very shameful. Not getting an education is very shameful. Doing drugs is very shameful.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe has some of the highest literacy levels in the world. You could go to Zimbabwe as an English speaker, and anyone will be able to speak English to you. So there is a culture of education there, and I can say the same for Nigerians, Ghanaians, Ethiopians, and we could talk about the whole of Africa. So I think, and this is my idea, and this is what I think about it. I think Africa as a continent has a little bit of a blame to it, because we should have claimed African Americans as our people from a period of time. Yeah. Because if we claimed them as our people, then they would have an establishment of who they are.
Yeah.
And where they're from. And once you have self-identity, it helps. I mean, Ghana are doing that right now. They give, if you're African American, you can go to Ghana and with a free visa, just so you can see shit, see where you're from. Yeah. You know what I mean? Get deep rooted of where you're from.
Yeah.
And I think, just going back to the Nipsey Hussle thing, I think as a people, we need mental illness is a priority. Yeah. There needs to be more investment. There needs to be more investment in clinics, psychology clinics, therapy. And a lot of people don't rock with therapy. That's fair enough. Yeah. That means you might not be comfortable with that. You don't need to go, but definitely talking to someone. Definitely, sitting down with yourself sometimes and just really breaking it down. Really thinking about where you can improve as a person.
Exactly, man. I mean, like we said, man. If you look at African, like I said. Let's look at the median household income of America, right?
Yeah.
African Americans sit on the second last of the bracket.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
If you look at Nigerian Americans, those who immigrated into America, they're sitting in the middle of it. So when you put the comparisons together, it's like, okay, we can argue that it might be structural barriers. We can argue that it might be institutional racism. That's your point. My point that we can go about this all day. Like I don't agree with that. I think majority of institutions aren't racist and that we got out the way for them. But at the end of the day, that it's a cultural thing, right? Because you're looking into African American households, and they got 74% of single parent households, like just single mothers running a household. Lack of a masculine figure, lack of a father figure, and those who tend to have a lack of a masculine figure in the house tend to be going around the streets, drug dealing, crimes, robberies, all that kind of stuff. And 70% of those in America who are incarcerated come from single parent households.
Exactly.
That's bad, right? So I think that there needs to be, before we talk about, and we talked about this before, before we talk about anything else in terms of addressing, the reform of the criminal justice system based on what view you have on it, or in terms of structural, barriers that is impeding, African Americans from succeeding in society in America, that community needs to pretty much have the understanding of the roots, the history, so they have that sense of purpose, being unified as a community together. Have some rather than self-hate, it's pretty much addressing each other's needs and understanding each other, self-love, and that's how you move forward, and then you tackle that issue.
After that, understanding.
Yeah, like Jordan Peterson said, right?
Yeah.
You gotta clean your room before you go changing the world. And if you haven't sorted your life out yet, you can't go changing someone else's. Change someone
because
else's
look, and just to your topic on why I think that. Because we know for a fact there's been a lot of institutions who have historically suppressed black people in America,
and
it's obviously a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the biggest examples, and what I think is one of the biggest, most important examples, is that, as I said, zoning laws where African Americans cannot live or live in particular areas,
own property there,
and over a long period of time, obviously they could not attain wealth because they were zoned out of those areas.
Yeah.
And obviously they couldn't. Certain families, even if let's just say you're single, you have a family, young family, and you want to live in a particular area, you weren't allowed to live there. If you didn't live in a particular area, you didn't access. You couldn't have access to particular resources and so forth and so forth. But my whole perspective is this. As a people, we can talk about that, and those rich issues are real. Those issues, racism, structural racism, I feel like those issues are extremely real. But the first thing we have to do is we need to heal.
Yeah.
We need to, let's not even go, I don't even want to talk about that right now.
Yeah.
That's not a discussion for today, but our discussion is that we've seen this movie happen a couple of times.
Yeah.
Where influential people are killed based off jealousy and self-hate.
Exactly.
Which was exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So we need to find a way where we have a conversation with ourselves. I mean, and to talk about your point, I feel like a lot of people, when they see on Instagram, they see a lot of like black men talk about masculinity. They see, but that's a big part of it. I definitely feel like men should have a conversation with each other if there's something wrong. Exactly. But I feel like society is trying to feminize the black male, which is what black kids don't need. Black kids need and other kids, they need masculine figures. They need black men to play the black role within a household. And I'm not saying you be some immature, egotistical male who doesn't speak about their emotions.
Because that's not masculinity.
Because that's not masculinity. Yeah. But I'm talking about a responsible man who plays a father figure within the home. Yeah. And I hate seeing our society tries to feminize the black man, because I feel like that's a way of holding the people back.
I think like in general, society is trying to feminize masculinity in general. They think that anything that is masculine is toxic. We shouldn't be talking about it. We should just try to get rid of it, because you've seen the ad campaigns.
Yeah, we see that.
We see ad campaigns in Australia all the time about it. It's like that's not the issue, man. The issue is that we don't have enough of those figures. That's why it's happening.
Exactly.
Right. So, in terms of that, man, like you said, there needs to be as a masculine figure. What it is by definition, well, my definition is pretty much individual responsibility. Teach your kids about that. Financial literacy.
Yeah.
How to take care of your family. Understand that you can't run away from problems. You gotta address it and reinvest and give back to your community. That's what a man should be like, man.
I know, but even with that in America, you talk about reinvesting in your community, but we've seen so many people die.
Exactly.
Being back in the community, so you're in a situation where you want to help, but people will fucking kill you, bro. Like, this is for real. People are jealous. People don't want to. If me and you are brought up in the same community and you choose to make certain decisions that get you out of that community, and you do well, and you choose to go back and show your face in that community,
like, fuck this guy,
and then I'm jealous and I'm looking at you like, these guys had the same opportunities as me, but you chose a different path.
Yeah.
people will kill you. People are jealous, you know.
And I think LeBron James brought that issue up as well after Nipsey's death. It was sad to see, you know, like 2 kids at the same path, you know, like pretty much, he made it out that hood, and because he had the ambition and that person didn't have the ambition, he came back and then he was like, nah, like he forgot about me. He left me here. Like,
exactly.
That's the mentality. It's like it's jealousy.
It's
you
crabs
can't do
in a
that,
barrel.
man.
So crabs in barrel, and I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But also, so I wanted to get your opinion on AI in Australia.
Okay.
Because
that's a big issue.
You know, that's a really big issue in Australia. And I feel like a lot of people talk about it in America, but it's happening rapidly in Australia.
Exactly.
For example, I know a lot of people have heard about the Banking Royal Commission and, you know, their failures in regulation and reporting.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't realize is because of that, and I understand the benefits and the cons, but because of that, it has caused banks to really revamp their investment in creating AI to do reporting and to focus on regulation. Yeah. You know, obviously because of that. So that has meant a lot of people who have been doing that. So a lot of these people are back office people. So a lot of people who do the number crunchings for CBA on, you know, on off-market transfers and stuff, they're losing their jobs. So I know. I think it was NAB and ANZ. They're set to cut something like 6,000 back office jobs. Yeah. And the people who they're cutting the jobs, people who are getting let go, are the 55-year-old lady who never went to university but has 3 kids living in western suburbs. Yeah. Who is going to be extremely difficult for her to retrain, re-educate. Yeah. And for her to, again, find another job, especially in the market that we're in right now.
Exactly, man. Where everything's automated and it's high-skilled, highly specialized jobs. Yeah. And you got to be highly skilled for that shit.
And, I mean, AI is great because in the same sense, it means that a lot of highly skilled people are going to be employed. Yeah. But at the same sense, more people are going to be let go than more people are going to be retrained. Exactly. And I hate that argument. People be like, because we got AI, we just gonna tell people to be a software designer.
Exactly, right.
If someone can't go to university, how are you gonna tell them to sit down to become a software designer?
Yeah, man. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, it's AI. See, that's an interesting topic because honestly, a lot of conservatives, surprisingly, will be like, "Hey, we should just restrict the development of machines and automation." I think that's ridiculous. You can't do that because automation in general raises living standards because they are able to perform a task more efficiently at a lower cost because there's no training, there's no keeping them morale happy or whatever it is because it's just a machine. Yeah. And businesses thrive off that. And you're able to provide goods and services at a lower price at higher quality. And that obviously has led to increasing living standards in the world. But the point is, pretty much, I just came across this dude, Andrew Yang. He's running for president. He's the Democrat, and obviously I don't like the Democrats, but this guy
makes some good points.
Makes some
real shit. Yeah,
he's data-driven, dude. He's like, he broke down the numbers, right? So his proposal was to talk about universal basic income. If you were to tell me UBI, universal basic income, a year ago, I'd be like, you're fucking crazy, you're a communist, I don't want to talk to you, right? It's a waste of fucking money, but you're giving someone free money, they're not going to work. What the hell are you on about? Yeah. But putting that aside, he's pretty much saying that his proposal was to give $1,000 a month to every single citizen in America, regardless of your income level, rich, middle class, whatever the hell it is, you're getting $1,000 a month just because you're a shareholder of the greatest country in the world, he says, United States. Yeah. Right? Because we produce, they innovate, all that kind of stuff. And his point was because, mentioning what you said about the retraining thing, where like, the general economic theory is basically, if automation takes over the manufacturing job or takes over a low skill job, administrative job, whatever the hell it is, you can just pretty much the general economic theory is, hey, that's gonna shift to more highly specialized jobs, which are more better for you, higher paying. It's gonna be good for you guys. You just got to retrain yourself and then just come back into it. You know what I mean? And that's very unlikely for anyone to do because in America, I'm not too sure about Australian statistics, but in America, it's 8% of STEM related fields are open right now in jobs. Really? Yeah. 8%, he says. That's what Andrew Yang cites. And then there's like millions of people in retail, hospitality, manufacturing,
8%,
truck driving, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. It's like, imagine you telling them to go retrain themselves You know, sit back, go to university, retrain themselves, and then go into those jobs that only has an 8% window. No one's going to do that. And that means rural communities got to move over to different states, like Silicon Valley, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just so they can get that job, which is highly unlikely, because if I was a recruiter or a business owner, why would I recruit someone who's 50 years old, who had 20, 30 years of truck driving experience, redeveloped himself as a software developer, probably sucks ass because he's not familiar with, right?
Yeah, no experience.
Compared to a 21-year-old kid who just graduated from MIT, let's hire him. You know, like obviously you picked the MIT guy.
Yeah.
So
and even when you say that, I hope people understand that we're talking about the realities of this world.
Yeah.
We're not talking about fairy tale. All that sounds like a great story, but we're talking about realities. We're not talking about miracle stories. We're talking about the average older person.
Middle class
person.
Yeah. It's like, as a libertarian, or conservatives, that's our theory. Like, they should just specialize, retrain themselves, and just all that kind of stuff. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't agree with that anymore. Yeah. Because it's highly unlikely. It's human nature not to. They're afraid of change. Humans are afraid of change, and that's a big fucking change. Yeah. When you have 4 kids, and you're 50 years old, and that's all you know, and now you're gonna retrain yourself as a software developer. Not happening. Yeah. So his proposal was, and I really support this now, is that $1,000 a month to each family. And that's pretty much, he says it's a dividend, right? Because you're a shareholder of the country. Yeah. And it's an opt-in or opt-out kind of thing, where like if you already have existing welfare going on, where it's like you're making over 1.3 or like over $1,000, let's say 1.3, then you don't need to do it. You don't need to opt in, but you can choose to opt out. Like you can choose to opt out. But if you want that $1,000, you got to opt in, but then you got to sacrifice all the welfare that you have right now.
Which is fair enough.
Yeah, which is fair enough, right?
Sense.
But his point was because I generally asked him, I was like, fuck, that's a lot of money, bro, because you're going to supply all that kind of people with $1,000 a month. It ended up to being calculated like $3.7 trillion. You know what I mean? 3.7 trillion. That's a fucking stretch, right? That's a stretch. But he's saying that because of the opt-in kind of thing, where like if you forego your existing welfare payments and you go for that $1,000 a month, it shrinks down to by half the amount of $3.7 trillion.
Because some people would choose to go with their welfare payments because it might be a bit more.
Exactly. So it seems affordable, right?
Yeah.
And there's less paperwork. There's no case manager. There's no one checking up on you, seeing whether it's legitimately your claim for welfare or not. Because most American, most people on the welfare are on disability benefits in America. So it's like there's 2 buckets. There's one, people who are generally disabled, and there's the second one who's like I'm just gonna claim disabled because like I can't work, I don't want to work, but then if I work, that means I'm able-bodied. So his welfare is gonna get cut out. Yeah. Right. But if you're giving each person $1,000 a month, what you're doing is that you're kind of softening that blow of when you lose that job. Where if you lose the job to automation, you have that $12,000 to make ends meet. Yeah. Enough for you to provide for your family, enough to send your kids to school, dental, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And for young people who are 18 years old and get that $12,000, bro, if I had $12,000, then fuck, I would.
You could do a lot, bro.
You could do a lot
with that $12,000.
Entrepreneurial, whatever it is, but then even if you're spending that money, you're actually spending it to businesses, to small businesses, to your local businesses who don't have that money to invest, create more jobs, or they spend it for the manufacturer that they're getting supplies from, which circulates more and generates more opportunities within the economy anyway. Yeah. Right? So moving to that, it's like $12,000 is enough for you to make ends meet on that, but it's still below the poverty line, which is 12.7 in America. Yeah. So the conservatives will ask, hey, like if you're giving free money for free to people, no one's going to work. Yeah. But it's not enough for you to work. Exactly. It just softens the blow for you enough to survive until you get a job. And then to address the long-term issue for young people, for automation moving forward, is that we need to retrain young kids to be more aware of these jobs, because automation is going to open a lot more opportunities in terms of designing and all that kind of stuff.
And that's an interesting point. I was looking into an article that said that in the next 15 years, Africa is going to have 40% of the world's working force. Yeah. For a lot of people, that's fucking massive. That's a lot of people. The issue is this. Africans now, at this point, who live in Africa, I'm talking about the whole general, I'm talking about everyone, we're getting to the point now where we're seeing a lot more investment, we're seeing a lot more people. Yeah. But in 5 to 6 years' time, it's going to be a different type of workforce. Right? So we're going to have a lot more people who are computer orientated. We're going to have more computer engineers. We're going to have a lot more IT software engineers. A lot of people are going to be based off it's going to be a digitalization of the workforce. Are those 40% of people going to have those skills? And that goes back to when Nipsey Hussle was saying about his STEM program. When he was talking about he wants to train young black people in his community on maths, engineering, science, because he knows that unfortunately we're doing a good job, but these kids are still going to be 5 to 10 years behind. You know, and I think that's the importance of it. A lot of people are going into careers that they don't realize in 5 to 10 years
are going to be
obsolete. I mean, look at marketing. Marketing has nearly become obsolete.
HR as well. HR is going to be automated.
It's nearly completely become obsolete. You know, a lot of those nerds. I remember in high school, my year 12 teacher said, "I'm not even," and this was the biggest miss that she ever said. Great lady, but she said that don't do IT and software because it will never get you a job.
Man, I don't know who fucks at that, but that's ridiculous.
And I thought about it. I only remembered it like 2 years ago. And I was like, wow, that was a miss.
That was a miss. That's a big L.
But back to my point is that I think that people need to realize that, one, getting into a STEM program is going to be efficient for you in the long term. Two, we need to be able to be giving, for my example, I always try to say is that we need Africa to be able to, we need more computers. We need more, because Africa churns out a lot of engineers, and they do churn out a lot of professionals, accountants, We need more engineers, we need more scientists. Because realistically, that's where everything's heading towards. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. And just to put it back into the Australia's perspective, I think Australia is a big welfare state. There's a lot of people, if you look at your tax breakdown, when people have opportunity to, when your tax return comes back, look at the breakdown of where your money goes. About 40% of it goes to welfare.
70% of income taxes in New South Wales goes to welfare. 70%.
So my whole thing is that do you reckon that $1,000 would work in Australia?
Like, pretty much like I said, man, I think $1,000 a month is enough for you to make ends meet. You know what I mean? $12,000 a year is quite a good expense if you budget well. But for you to, live off $12,000 a year, it's not going to happen. That's why. It's not realistic. That's why Andrew Yang said pretty much, you have $12,000 to try to create that window for you to do something about it or spend money, and then that creates jobs, whatever. But for you still have to retrain yourself. You still have to do that kind of stuff, right? But I guess if you look into automation in Australia, though, like, because we're talking about US a lot. Australia, the most common industries that are going to be automated, the most likely are going to be retail, administration, hospitality, manufacturing, truck drivers, all that kind of stuff. And I think that there were 6 million jobs all in total of those kind of industries. And Australia's 22 million people. Right?
Very small.
So you got 6 people who are at risk of those jobs. Going to be automated. I think half of them are going to lose 3 million. 3 million is still a big fucking.
That's a lot of big
people, population, man. And what happens when people lose those jobs? You're gonna see a high rate of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, suicide, depression, mental breakdowns, all that kind of stuff, which is going to put a lot of strain on the public healthcare system, in which we can't afford anymore. And Medicare is we're charging 9.5% levy, but then we're spending 6% on GDP of it, and then plus chronic illnesses for the rising aging population. It's going to put a big strain on public services, and that means we're going to get taxed a lot more before we do anything about it. So,
but anyways, man,
PBI, man,
we got to wrap it up. I had to cut it off, but I appreciate you coming out of here, man. Awesome. There's going to be many more. Great discussion. Great peoples, man.
Yeah, man.
We'll end this.
Good talking to you.
All right, peace.